So the first official teaser for Hardcore Mode Rework would be in the form of the Void Reaver statue, as seen here, on the 12th of June 2024, so over a year since this was posted. The Below Natural said that there's a new Void Reaver design and it looks amazing. Can't share the design until the end of the year though. It's been over a year and over a calendar year since Below Natural made this post, and we do not have a new design for the Void Reaver. Now, it's in the past that this lobby render, which is seen in some of the leaderboards back in the day, was speculated to be the Void Reaver design. And while it does look a bit Void Reaver-y, especially with the base plate and the purple stuff, I don't think it is a Void Reaver leak. Many people say it's an Awakened Fallen King leak more than anything, which I cannot confirm nor deny, and I cannot confirm nor deny if this is a Void Reaver leak either. However, certainly, if Below Natural were to post about the Hardcore statue coming soon on the 12th of June 2024, it is likely that Hardcore Mode has been planned for a while before this, so probably since 2023, maybe even 2022. However, since this post, there's been relatively few leaks about Hardcore Mode leaks. Now, Below Natural wouldn't talk about the Hardcore Mode rework for a while, actually. In fact, he hasn't talked about it since that. However, someone who has talked about Hardcore Mode rework is Tyler, aka Star Wars, on Discord. Now, it started on the 11th of May 2024 when Star Wars made a joking comment, I guess, on Discord saying add Polluted Wastelands 2 enemies to Hardcore. Ironically enough, in Polluted Wastelands 2, we would get more enemies since this comment, and they were returning enemies from events. So with that, we could probably assume that Hardcore Mode is going to get returning enemies from maybe 2019, 2020. To clarify, that's a joke. When Fallen Mode was reworked and when Multi-Mode was reworked, they usually got their own unique enemies. The only enemy that I don't think was unique to Fallen Mode, apart from the Abnormals and the Quicks, are the Fallen Dreg. The Fallen Dreg was actually added at the time, but was never used until recently as a replacement for the heavy enemy. And the Fallen Dreg is actually just a remodeled version of the core blocks undead. In fact, it is the exact same version, except with a few color changes. However, when it comes to Multi-Mode, all of the enemies unique to Multi-Mode are actually unique. They aren't remodels or anything, as far as I'm aware. They may have heavy inspirations from stuff, but they've been modeled from the ground up. So I think that's the same for Hardcore Mode. I think all the enemies there, they'll be unique. It won't be returning enemies, and if they are returning enemies, they'll be slightly remodeled or remodeled from the ground up to the point where they're effectively new enemies. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a bunch of enemy replacements. So, for example, we know that the Void Reaver, it's still going to be in the game. However, it's going to get a new remodel. However, every single other enemy in Hardcore Mode is at threat of being removed. So I can very easily see the Abnormal, Quick, Hefty, Invisibles, Balloons, all those enemies being removed for something else. The Balloons and Leads, I think they're probably going to be kept around because they have unique immunities, so they probably will get remodeled because, I mean, currently they're kind of outdated. They use a slightly blocky texture from what is seen in the main game. Obviously, mysteries, they're going to get removed, and mystery bosses, even though, I mean, Hardcore Mode is the last game mode to actually support the mystery enemies, because if you kill them, they actually spawn into proper enemies. And, I mean, obviously, Hardcore Mode runs on legacy code. You know, stuff like the Mega Slow, the Fallen Reaper, the Fallen Rusher, the Fallen Titan. Yeah, they have actually got Fallen Mode replacements. So in Fallen Mode, there is a modern Fallen Rusher. However, I don't think the Fallen Rusher befits the theme of Hardcore Mode, well, from what I can probably tell, because each game mode in Tower Defense Simulator should be distinct. I mean, even Intermediate and Casual Mode, they've gotten slight distinctions between them. However, some enemies which are here for enemy's sake, for example, the Lava and the Circuit, for example, which I just thought, and the Health Cultist, which I think they're just thrown in there because, well, we have these unused enemies, we might as well use them. And the Soul, for example, and the Soul Boss. You have all of these themes clashing with each other in Hardcore Mode, feeling like it's more of a thing that they just threw together at the last minute, rather than something comprehensive that they built up. Like, none of these enemies have a consistent theme. You go from, like, fallen enemies to then enemies which are themed on the Gravedigger, kinda. You got the giant boss and the Gravedigger and the lava. Then you got stuff that's like Lead Balloon Slow King. Then you got the Error Circuit, which is like the original Fallen Mode. Then Speedy King, which is unique but similar to Error Circuit. But then you get the Molten Titan, Molten Boss, okay. Then a Health Cultist appears all of a sudden for just one wave, which everyone's complaining about because obviously that means you only can get one logbook from it. It means that the logbook that you get from the Health Cultist you can only get once in Hardcore Mode, and the chances of that are very, very low. Then the Soul appears all of a sudden, then Fallen Hero, Soul Stealer, and the Soul Stealer has a different theme to the Fallen Hero. Fallen then appears, different theme to the Soul Stealer. Then the Soul Boss appears, and you would have thought with Soul, Soul Stealer, Soul Boss that they will look similar. They don't. The Necromancer Boss, okay, and then the Fallen Sword Master. The Fallen Sword Master, I was aware that it's been in the game since like February 2020, and I just think it was kind of just thrown into hardcore mode on a whim. Certainly case for the Vindicator. The Vindicator wasn't in testing. And yes, it looks kind of similar to the Void Reaver, especially in its Rage mode. However, other than that, nothing really fits the theme of the Void Reaver other than the Vindicator. And maybe the Soul Stealer. So I would think that if hardcore mode, or when hardcore mode, because, I mean, they are working on it, gets reworked, I would think that the theme of hardcore mode would be very similar to that of Fallen mode, which is consistent. I mean, obviously, Fallen mode isn't perfect. I mean, the Fallen Drake is probably the most out-of-place enemy here. However, it is fairly consistent. And yes, the Breaker enemies, to be fair, the Breaker enemies just don't fit anything, really. But what can you do? They are like the universal enemy in Tower Defense Simulator. Now, Star Wars mentions, imagine a challenge that makes hardcore easy, what dumb modifiers throw at hardcore/fallen, and make hardcore hardcore. Obviously, here, he's trying to mention the fact that hardcore mode is going to get harder as of right now. You can see with changes to the game since 2024, so for example, you can see since 2023, there's been a huge spike in the amount of people who have got the hardcore mode badge. Beating hardcore mode has gotten easier, significantly easier, than what it was, say, back in 2021. Back in 2021, you'd be very surprised to get more than 200 players beating hardcore mode, and like everyone here, everyone before this update here, about October 2021, that's probably because of a military-based glitch. Then from September 2021 all the way to about March 2022, you'd notice that barely any people beat hardcore mode, and like through here is like barely over 50 players, and then all of a sudden there's a spike. This is because of like accelerator buffs, of DPS buffs, to towers basically, which made hardcore mode significantly easier. Now do bear in mind that the challenge of hardcore mode back in the day was that it was hard. I mean, obviously, not everyone could read a strategy and all of a sudden, yes, we could beat it. However, that's no longer the case. You could just follow multiple strategies, and there are multiple things that you need to do in hardcore mode, especially with mission quests, meaning that A, it's popular, and B, it has to be beatable. So I think what the developers are going to do is they're probably going to make hardcore mode significantly easier. By the way, I think the day with the highest amount of daily rewards, which is the 5th of November, nearly 5,000 players, it's because of a glitch back in the day with the Sledger, which froze enemies, and in fact it froze all types of enemies apart from the ones that didn't target it, so those are the hand bosses. Because of that, you were able to freeze all of the enemies, all of the hard enemies, in hardcore mode, and I think including the Void Reaver, allowing a lot of players to get the hardcore mode badge, which, I mean, obviously you can see spikes here. The spikes are likely because of either things getting easier in the game, so like the Gatling gun, or glitches. Now, this was a huge problem back in the day with hardcore mode because, well, I mean, people only beat hardcore mode because of the military-based glitch. And in fact, it got so bad to the point where Raz, or one of the developers back in the day, said that they would revoke the hardcore mode badge and then they would just rework it into a new badge that players would get, because they just thought everyone who got the hardcore mode badge previous to September 2021 glitched the badge, which they did not like. So, small wonder how they feel about all of these players getting the hardcore mode badge nowadays. All of this is to say, well, hardcore mode isn't hard anymore, not especially from when it was released. However, the only problem that I foresee with hardcore mode getting harder is, obviously, I've alluded to this, the mission quests that require to beat hardcore mode. I mean, everyone complains about hardcore mode being in these quests anyways, and personally, I slightly disagree with hardcore mode being involved with like mission quests, given the fact that firstly, they're level locked to level 50, although I think mission quests are actually level locked to level 50 anyways, or they may not be. I don't actually see a level lock for them. But it seems really strange to, like, level lock these quests without telling you. So, I mean, for example, Triumph Hardcore Mode with the accelerator twice. How would you know to do that unless you read the wiki? I mean, to be fair, the mission quests are the most popular pages on the wiki. In fact, I think it is the most popular page on the wiki. I think I have the stats that prove that, because many people want to know what they're getting themselves into before they accept the mission quest. And the only problem is, well, for example, the Star Spartan Militant skin, Triumph Hardcore Mode with the Militant once. I mean, as of right now, that's fairly doable. However, if Hardcore Mode were to get harder, that would be very challenging. So developers would either need to change these unless hardcore mode remains the same difficulty, which I don't think it will. I think it will get harder, or they'll screw over a load of players who want to get these towers skins, which, to be fair, I think they already have, especially with some of the quests, because they haven't changed it. I forgot which quest it is, but I think it's currently impossible because the developers, when they ported over the special maps, Polluted Wastelands 2, Badlands 2, and Pizza Party, they forgot to port over the correct code for these mission quests. I think it's Hazardous Haste. Now, another rumour is that hardcore mode may be nerfed down to 40 waves, because, well, this person asks, well, if it's over 40 waves, it doesn't make hardcore special anymore. It just messes up the general base wave structure. This is in reference to Fallen mode. When Fallen mode was speculated to be reworked, some people said it's going to get over 40 waves. I mean, at the time, all the game modes, or most of the game modes, had 40 waves, apart from the easiest one, which was either easy or beginner's mode back in the day. Although that's no longer the case anymore. They have changed around with the waves so that it ranges from 25 all the way to 40, 40 only being used for Fallen mode. However, hardcore mode is probably likely going to stay either 50 waves, or it may decrease down to 45 waves to keep in line with the wave structure of Fallen mode and the incremental increase in the amount of waves that each game mode has. I mean, Star Wars just says here, who said that we aren't going to touch hardcore mode, indicating that there could be a chance of the wave structure, well, definitely the wave structure, but the amount of waves that hardcore mode has probably going to change. And then this year, on the 27th of January 2025, one day before my birthday, Star Wars says, who said we aren't focusing on hardcore mode, given someone asked why other gamers get more attention currently than hardcore mode, that being special maps. Star Wars then says hardcore mode is being worked on in the background, similar to how other game modes were worked on in the background. The first game mode that comes to mind is intermediate mode, or what would turn out to be intermediate mode with Patient Zero. That was first leaked in 2023 and then added very, very late 2024. Star Wars then says you haven't seen our hardcore plans yet, which is fair enough. We haven't even got that Void Reaver leak that Below Natural promised us. Hardcore rework soon. Obviously, I joked about it previously, but soon here in this context probably means 2026 for a reason that I'll get to later. And then Star Wars saying, but for real, we're taking our time with the hardcore mode rework, which I think we all gathered. Now, I say this because recently there's been a schedule leak of what Paradoxum Games plans to do, or at least they claim to be a schedule leak before going back on their word, before going back on the tweet and then deleting it. So it's all very confusing. However, the one important thing that's not mentioned here is hardcore mode rework. For something like the hardcore mode rework, I would expect it to have its own schedule and somehow interlaced with what's going on here, because, I mean, like PvP mode, that's its own special game mode, and hardcore mode rework, it's always been in the back of the people's minds, and it's probably going to be quite large. However, here, it's not mentioned at all. Now, I would have to assume, because, I mean, Trailer Guy here says that it isn't in order and it's subject to change. I mean, I have my reason to doubt it, but if we were to believe this person, I would have to assume that this is probably going to be a leak of the next 5 things that are coming to Tower Defense Simulator, or this is a leak of everything that's coming in 2025, the major stuff. Hardcore mode is not mentioned here, and as Tyler suggests, they're taking their time with it. So I think that hardcore mode isn't coming out in 2025. I wouldn't say it's even likely to come out in 2026. We have no confirmation it's going to come out in 2026. However, again, the developers could spring up a surprise. After all, we didn't expect the Hacker Tower to come out this year. I mean, yes, there was been some teasers of the Hacker Tower in, I believe, January, at the same time as the hardcore mode was reworked, but we didn't get a timeline of the Hacker Tower being confirmed until about March. So the developers can spring a surprise on us. We'll just have to wait and see. And we'll just have to wait and see on what hardcore mode rework actually looks like. I heavily suspect that the fundamentals of hardcore mode will remain the same, meaning that you're probably still going to get gems from hardcore mode. They probably won't change the currency around, nor will they probably change around the currency reward too much. Although, given the fact that they're unaware that hardcore mode doesn't give out that many gems, because, well, I mean, they don't think that hardcore mode gives out that many gems, because here they have it listed as between 100 and 150, whereas in the game you actually get up to 250 if you triumph hardcore mode, and even higher depending on the map you do. Either that, or this is actually showing the statistic of the average amount of gems that people get in hardcore mode, between 100 and 150.